Hashem, today's daf yomi is Zevachim daf chafal of Zevachim 21. Today's daf yomi will start on 21a, around 9 lines from the top. Gemara is continuing our discussion of the kior and the being kiddush yadayim v'raglayim of the basin and washing your hands and legs. And the Gemara says, "Yibayu ma'ol kadesh yada v'ragl of the kior." Are you able to be mekadesh? You know what? For one sentence, Sam, do me a favor. Could just take off the tablecloth off the table and then just eat without the tablecloth. So put the tablecloth on the other one. That way, it'll be good. Baruch Hashem. Thank you, Sam. And then just put the tablecloth on the other table. Yeah. So the Gemara asks the question: Ibayu ma'u lekadesh yadav v'raglav of the kior. So should a person? We know that a person has to be, the Kohen has to be Mekadesh Yad V'Ragel before they serve in the temple, before they do the avoda. But they're supposed to wash their hands and legs through shaficha, pouring their water onto their hands and legs. But what if instead of doing that, they just stuck them into the basin? Is that going to be sufficient? So the Gemara says, do we say Mimenu? Do we say the pasuk says v'rachatzu Aaron of Agadav Mimenu? They should wash their hands and legs from it. Esidehem ve'etzragoyhem, from it. Amar Rachmanav huo b'socho, not in it. Or dilma fil b'socho, or maybe even in it. Okay. So it says Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Tashma. Let's come and try and bring a proof from a brayso that we cited yesterday. Osha tavo b'mei me'ara v'avad avodaso psua. That it says that if a person, the Kohen, immersed in a meimara, which is basically another way of saying a mikvah, he immersed in the mikvah, and he did his avodah. We're in the middle of 21a, and then he did his service, then it's going to be disqualified. So then it means to say that even though he immersed entirely in the mikvah, it's disqualified. From the fact that says no, the reason why it's disqualified is not because you immersed your entire body, but because you went into a ma'ara, but not into the kior. But if you had immersed in the basin in the same way you immersed in the meikara by sticking your hands and legs in, that would be okay. And so therefore we see from here that if you just stick your hands into the basin instead of pouring it onto you, it's going to be kosher. Gemara says, no, that's an improper inference. It's trichoy. No, it's telling us specifically that even though you went into a mikvah, it's not sufficient. Shlo tomar kol gufo tovel ben yadav v'raglav koshkein. So we don't want you to say, listen, you could immerse your whole body in there, so for sure you could do your hands and legs. So we don't want to say that. So since we don't want to say that, for this reason, we're saying that therefore we have to say that the meimar is no good. But don't learn from there that if you had gone into the meikir, if you had immersed your hands and legs in the meikir, it'll be okay. So now we have the next piece. Amar bar Yosef, meikir nifsalin limatirin kematirin levarim kevarim. So the first position of this dispute, we're going to see a three-way dispute, is from Rabbi bar Yosef, and it says that basically the waters of the kior are going to be kosher for different services at different times. So the matirin, that is referring to those parts of the service which allow the sacrifice to be effective, either the blood being sprinkled on the altar or the komets being placed, the flour being placed on the mizbeach. So those become disqualified once nightfall happens. That you have to sprinkle the blood of the animal before nightfall. And so therefore, let's say you want to wash your hands and legs in order to sprinkle the blood or in order to pour the flour on the altar. Therefore, the water itself will be disqualified. The water of the kior will also be disqualified by the setting of the sun. And so therefore, if you had put the water down into the well before sunset, then you could use it the next day for sunset, for the whole day. But if you didn't do it before sunset, then you can't use it for the daytime. And levarim kevarim, whereas the limbs are like the limbs. Meaning, say the limbs of the limbs of the carbon can be brought on the altar at night, and so therefore the For this reason, if you want to wash your hands and legs for the purpose of putting the limbs on the altar, then it's not going to be disqualified with dawn because you also have mean to say it's only disqualified once the dawn comes, not from sunset, and so therefore the mekior is only disqualified with the dawn, and so therefore, according to Rebbe Chia Bar Yosef, the first position, that if you put the water down into the well to make sure it doesn't get disqualified, that only helps if you do that before sunset. That helps you to allow you to sprinkle to use the water for sprinkling the blood and the komets the next day, and also for sure for the Avarim. But if you didn't do it before sunset, you only did it in the middle of the night, that'll only help you for the Avarim. That's the first position. That's the position of Reb Chia Bar Yosef. So then we see the position of Rav Chisda. He says, Aflu matirin ein nifsalim ba'amud hashachar kevarim. He said, no, for everybody, as long as you put it down as long as you re-immerse the water into the well before dawn, and then you could use it the next day even for the matir and even for the water and the komet. So that's more lenient. So we've seen the most strict is Rav Chia Bar Yosef, and the more lenient is Rav Chisda. Now we have the third position is that of Rabbi Chia. Rabbi Chia says, Kivan Shashako Shuv Emaleu. So Rabbi Chia says that, Rabbi Yochanan says the kior, Kivan Shashako, since you put it in the well before sunset so that it doesn't become disqualified, Shuv Emaleu, you're no longer allowed to take it up in the middle of the night, only after dawn. And so we see that Rabbi Yochanan's on the position that if you'll take it up in the middle of the night, it will become disqualified completely, both for the matirin and for the avodas evarim, because his position is that the setting of the sun and one moment of the night will be disqualified. And so therefore Rabbi Yochanan seems to be the most strict, that according to Rabbi Chia Bar Yosef, you just have to lower it in the morning. You just have to lower it before sunset, and then it'll be okay for the matirin and also for the avarim. Whereas Rav Chisda says no, you just have to do it before dawn, and that'll be okay for both. Whereas Rabbi Yochanan says that if you didn't do it before sunset, not only is it not okay for the matirin, it's also not okay for the avarim. It's not good for anything. That's what Rabbi Yochanan's position. So the implication of what Rabbi Yochanan is saying is that if you didn't put it down before sunset, you can't even use it for the limbs at night. You can't even use it to be Mekadesh the limbs, to Mekadesh yourself to do the service with the limbs. But is that really the case? Rabbi Yochanan is so strict about that. But Amar Rabbi Asi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Mishmei Elfa. Again, Rabbi Yochanan is citing his old chavrusa from his days in yeshiva Elfa. Kiur shelo shiku mi ba'erev. Mekadesh meno avodas laila or machar eno mekadesh. That we say that according to this position of Rav Asi in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, he's in the same name of Elma. He seems to be saying like the first position of Rav Chia Bar Yosef, that if there was a basin that you did not, that there was a basin that you did not lower into the ground before sunset, you can't use it for the matirin, but you can use it for the avarim. So that seems to be just like Rav Chia Bar Yosef. Also, the phrase that Rabbi Yochanan says is, once you lower it down before sunset, then you cannot take it up. Well, what does that mean? What does that mean? Meaning to say that, which he says, what does that mean? Doesn't it mean, why is he saying that? You can't take it up for the service of the day. Doesn't it mean? So this is the Gemara's answer. Gemara says, "My eno ma'aleo nami the kamar." No, what does it mean when it says eno ma'aleo? It means the kamar avodas yom, avodas lailo chazi. So Rabbi Yochanan is actually saying, according to this answer, the same thing as Rabbi Chia Bar Yosef. He's saying, what does it mean when he says you can't eno ma'aleo? It means you can no longer use it to be mekadesh for during the day, but you can use it to be mekadesh for the avodah of the night. So the Gemara says, well, if that's the case, we're seeing that Rabbi Yochanan is the exact same position of Rabbi Chia Bar Yosef. He's the exact same position of Rabbi Chia Bar Yosef. The Gemara says, no. No, there's a distinction between them. What's the distinction between them? The distinction between them is Gezeiras Shikua. We're on top of Chafal from a base, meaning to say the decree of lowering it down. The Rabbi Yochanan says that biblically speaking, the water will not be disqualified if you didn't lower it before sunset. It's not going to be disqualified both for the Avarim and even for the Matirim, like Rav Pista. Meaning to say he's more lenient. That if you didn't lower it before sunset, biblically speaking, you could use it the next day, be Mekadesh in order to do the Avarim and even the Matirim, even to do the sprinkling of the blood. But the Chachamim made a decree that every night the kior should be lowered down, and they should not take it up at night. Maybe you'll forget to do it afterwards. And so therefore, it's just a decree of the Rabbanan. And then the water, because the water you would forget, and the water would be disqualified by dawn. And since the water will this way be kodesh, you should lower it down before sunset, and therefore he's of the position. So that's why Rabbi Yochanan says kivan sheshako emaleo, meaning to say he's saying that once you lowered it, you shouldn't take it up. This is a decree of the rabbis, that meaning to say that it should stay down there the whole night and they shouldn't take it up at all, because maybe you'll forget to lower it down afterwards and then it'll become disqualified. And so therefore, that's Rabbi Yochanan's language. So according to Rabbi Yochanan, it means to say, that once you lower it, you shouldn't take it up in the middle of the night and with the intention of using it in the dawn, because that would be a problem. And so he says, and so therefore he's basically arguing with Rabbi Yosef, because Rabbi Yosef is saying that biblically speaking, the Mei Kior is disqualified at night for the next day. But Rabbi Yochanan is saying that biblically speaking, the Mei Kior, if it was at night, you'd be able to use it the next day. But his concern is that if you're going to take it up in the night, that it'll become disqualified for the Matirin, and so therefore he uses the language of Nifsan. You had a question here? We'll read the Rashi. Rashi can explain it. You had a question, Jeff?
Yeah. So at sunset, that means no one can wash their hands then daybreak.
From the Kior, yeah. Yeah.
So if you're going to do the night service, you have to do it before sunset.
Yeah. Look at what Rashi says. Kolmar, we're on the top of 21b. The Gemara says, Kolmar, Hada Ukim Ein Maleo de Rabbi Yochanan. Why does Rabbi Yochanan say the language of Ein Maleo, that you're not allowed to take it up? Mishum Psul Avodos Yom. Because otherwise it will become disqualified for service the next day. And because otherwise it will become disqualified for service the next day. Hold on one second. Because otherwise we become disqualified for service the next day. And it was not like the Gemara had originally thought that you can't take it up at night, because if you do it, laila poslo avodas hayom, that the night will be disqualified for the next day, like Reb Chia, that the night, if it's up at night, it disqualifies for those who want to use it the next day. Ella, the reason why you can't take it up is because Shema will yachzor v'yishka'enu, that maybe you won't put it back in the ground. V'nimtza amud hashachar poslo avodas machar, and then the dawn will disqualify for the next day, and because the u'olam imshaku kodem amud hashachar kosher. But always, if you lowered it before the dawn, it will be kosher for both, because the night is not disqualified at all, and everything really is by dawn. That's why Rabbi Yochanan doesn't say it's disqualified, like Rabbi Pia said. Meaning we don't take it up. We don't want the waters to become disqualified. The kivan, the kadesh will be klisheres, mitzvah l'sharim, because it became sanctified by klisheres. It's a mitzvah to watch it. Kishar kachim. And if you'll take up the basin, then we have to be concerned that maybe you'll forget it before dawn. But if it would just be left up at night, well, mifsal, it wouldn't really be disqualified, because the night does not really disqualify it. It was just a concern about the next day. It will come on, Parach, and Rashi tells us later on, the Gemara is going to ask If Rabbi Yochanan says that the night does not disqualify it really even for the matirin and everything that lies upon the morning, Hainu de Rav Chisda, Damar Lailo Paso, Elam Shachar Paso. He says it's not the night but the dawn. Rabbi Chia lo also also, but Rabbi Chia himself did not say it's prohibited to take it up. So according to your question, Rabbi Chia would say just lower it and then you could take it up. Rabbi Yochanan is saying you can't take it up again. Why? Mishum Gzera Shikua. He wasn't concerned about that decree. Ela de Baloso Nifsal Miyad Avodas Matir. But his concern was that if you take it up at night, it will be disqualified for the next day. Elkach Naka Lashon Nifsal. He says it's disqualified. Yeah. If it didn't go down before dawn, you have to take it up. Yeah, you lower it before dawn and then take it up. Yeah. Yeah, that water is disqualified. So I guess you could switch it out. You could drain it and then switch it out. You couldn't just. Well, you could re-lower it, but then that water wouldn't be able to be used. That water wouldn't be. That water that was in there. Yeah. So when it goes down, then it would be okay. Yeah. Yeah. When it goes down, it'll be cleansed. Yeah. Well, let's see what the Gemara says here. The next thing, I think that should be okay. That water becomes disqualified, but you could switch it out. Question is, if you didn't switch it out, so their concern is that you didn't lower it down, and then it's the same water, and you forgot to switch it out. Gemara says, is this really the case that you have to leave it submerged all night? Let's say you washed your hands and legs for the Chumas Adeshin. The next day, when the sun rises, you don't need to rewash them because you already did it at the beginning of the avoda. Meaning to say that the kiddush that you did at the end of the night for Chumas Adeshin also works for the next day because it was the beginning of the service of the day. And if Rabbi Yochanan's on the position that we lift up the kior just for this kiddush for the Chumas Hadeshin alone, and then immediately we lower it again, then Rabbi Yochanan should have said that after the kiddush we need to lower it again. And from the fact that he doesn't mention that, it proves that he doesn't agree with this decree that you have to lower it. So how can we say that? So the Gemara says, Bishlama Rava. It makes sense according to Rava, who we said yesterday, the Mukim Lahi, that he said this position of Rabbi Yochanan is like Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, who says that it's not disqualified. But we could say that this teaching of Rabbi Yochanan, with respect to the fact that once it was submerged, you don't need to lift it up again, is like Rabbi, because according to Rabbi, it became disqualified, and for sure you would need to lower it, and that's why he doesn't mention this, because it's obviously, according to Rabbi Elazar Bar Shimon, because it's not disqualified, and they didn't have to lower it. El Abaye the Mukim Laka Rabbi, but Abaye, who says that this teaching of Rabbi Yochanan is like Rabbi, and the reason why you don't need to be Mekadesh it the next day is because it's from the rising of the crowing of the rooster until the morning, it's not disqualified. So therefore, with respect to water that's become biblically disqualified, for sure you shouldn't say that it's okay. Kasha the Rebbe ad the Rebbe. So therefore, it's a question from Rebbe on Rebbe. Why, if the teaching of the Kior does he say you have to lower it? Or but why by Chumas Hadeshin does he say you don't have to lower it? So the Gemara's answer is the that he lifts up the kior prior to the Chumas Hadeshin to wash their hands, and then again he lowers it after the Chumas Hadeshin. So that's what Rabbi Yochanan says, that indeed that you have to lower it in the middle of the night, right before dawn, so that it doesn't become disqualified. So if that's the case, if that's the case, Rabbi Yochanan says that the water is not disqualified at all with the setting of the sun. That's the case. Why does Rabbi Yochanan say that if the water was not closed before sunset, the water was not submerged before sunset, it's not good? Why is it not good? Kiyantif. Have a great yantif. You had a problem, Jeff? So the Gemara says,
Says you have to do it right before dawn.
He says you do, according to this point to the Gemara, he's saying raise it before dawn to wash their hands and the legs, and then lower it again. So if that's the case, how does this dovetail with the statement we said that you have to lower before sunset? What's the point of that? So the Gemara says, ain't sarcha kaddish. When it says l'machar eino mekadesh, no, it means just the opposite of what we read. It's not that it's not good. It means he doesn't need to sanctify it. It means it's good enough. Because it wasn't disqualified. So the Gemara says, so you mean to say that Rabbi Yochanan is saying that even if you didn't lower it before sunset, it's still okay the next day for washing your hands and legs for the matirim, for the blood and the komet. But that's exactly the position of Rav Chisda, who says that even if you didn't do it before sunset, it's still good for the next day. Gemara says no. Ika benayu mitzvah shikua. The distinction between Rav Chisda and Rabbi Yochanan is the mitzvah of lowering it down. That according to Rav Chisda, there's no mitzvah to lower it again in the middle of the night, because he says it's not going to be so that it doesn't become disqualified, but rather they would lower it close to dawn and they would raise it after dawn. Whereas according to Rabbi Yochanan, there's a mitzvah to lower it the night before. So therefore, so that when they come to sanctify for the Trumas Hadeshin, they'll find it lowered, and then they will not forget again to lower it right afterwards. So Rabbi Yochanan is saying, lower it in the evening, so that when they come the next morning for Trumas Hadeshin, they'll find it lowered, raise it, and then after they wash their hands, they'll lower it again. That's what Rabbi Yochanan is adding on to Rav Chisda, which Rav Chisda doesn't say. So basically, we have three positions. According to Rav Chia Bar Yosef, he says, just lower it before night, and that way you could do whatever you want for the next day with it. Rav Yochanan says, lower before night, raise it for the Trumas Hadeshin, and then lower it again for the next day. Whereas Rav Chia is saying you don't even need to lower it before night, just lower it right before dawn. So the Gemara says, Meisrei, but we have a problem on Rav Chisda, who says that there's no mitzvah to lower it down. It says, Lo ayu roin so that the Kohanim would not see, going back to the idea we were discussing yesterday for the removal of the ashes, that the Kohanim would not see the Kohen who had the merit to remove the ashes, which we said this was the first service done, but it was done before the dawn. They wouldn't see him. Below Shoman as Koho, they couldn't even hear him. All they heard was the sound of the machine that was manipulating the kior. And then they would say, said, oh, he's about to wash his hands and legs. That's how we know he's about to do it. So don't we see from here, my love, the Masalakle, isn't it the sound of taking it up from the well? Alma Meshakle, that proves that the basin was lowered down. And so therefore it's a proof against Rav Chisda, who says that they just lowered it down after the Trumas Hadeshin. Gemara says, no, the Meshakle. No, that is actually that they heard it after he washed the legs, they lowered it down. Well, that's what they're saying. It's not clear. So he's saying, what sound were they hearing? So isn't it a question on Rav Chisda? Isn't it the sound of them raising it? So he says, which would have been a question on Rav Chisda. So he said, no, it's the sound of them lowering it. And so therefore it's not a question on Rav Chisda. So the Gemara says, well, if they were lowering it, would you hear the sound? Yes, you would hear the sound lowering it. The Meshakle begilgula, because they heard the sound. They heard the sound of the wheel, of the machine. So that's what the Meshakle they intentionally made a sound so that people would hear it. Why? So that they hear the sound and then they come. And that's what we were talking about. You want to hear the sound and come running. Imagine you have an alarm in your room and you hear the sound, and what do you do when you hear the sound? You immediately go running to serve Hashem. So they hear the sound, it's time for everybody to come running. Gemara says, but why do you need the sound of the Trumas Hadeshin? Why do you need the sound of the Kior? You already had a guy whose job it was to walk around and his name was Gabini, and he would say, Amdu Kohanim Lavoidasam, the Leviim Laduchanam, Laduchanchem, Yisrael Mamatchem. He said, get up! Kohanim to serve in the temple, Leviim, it's your job to get up on the duchen and to start singing. And Yisrael, go to your mamadas. He would walk around and say, Come, it's time to get up and serve Hashem. Why do you need the wheel of the kior? Or says, sometimes you need 2 alarms. Sometimes people need 2 alarms. You need 1 alarm and a second alarm. Somebody will hear 2 different announcements. You need 2 different texts to remind you to come running. So that's, I will just go on a little bit more, but so the Gemara